Bugs are disgusting. In horror movies, slashers don't bother me. Same with cannibalism, zombies, torture, whatever. They just don't faze me. Most of the time. However, if your movie has bugs, real bugs, not CG bugs, then more times than not, I am sufficiently grossed out. So now that we're in October, what better time to look at some revolting bug-filled horror films? Here's 5 bug-filled horror movies you may have missed, forgotten about, or just avoided. Empire of the Ants. Empire of the Ants is a 1977 sci-fi horror film from director Burt I. Gordon. The movie's about a land developer showing off an island to a group of potential buyers. Unfortunately for them, a bunch of barrels filled with radioactive waste have reached the shores before them. A local colony of ants discovers the waste, and it mutates them into giant monstrosities. Even worse, the queen ant is able to use her pheromones to control humans and make them do her bidding. This was the third H.G. Wells adaptation released by AIP. The first was 1976's The Food of the Gods, and then 1977's The Island of Dr. Moreau. Each film was loosely based on their respective novel. Mr. Big loved these kind of mutant films. In 1957, he did the giant locust movie, Beginning of the End. Back then, he used a very crude method for the visual effects, putting live insects on either a miniature set or a still image. This made the insects look huge. He did that again here, despite there being other methods available. In this, the limitations stood out more since the ants would often crawl around in unpredictable ways, and in some cases, it made it look like the ants were walking upwards into nothing. The movie had soap opera star Joan Collins in the lead, and this was far from her only horror film. She was in Dark Places and Fear in the Night, as well as 2 horror anthologies, Tales from the Crypt and Tales That Witness Madness. Although she didn't like doing this movie very much. She said the giant ant props were rough and would often scratch the members of the cast who had to interact with them. The movie was filmed in Florida in 1976 in various swampy areas. The movie was released into theaters on July 29th, 1977. Critics really didn't like the film, and it ended up doing so-so at the box office, making about $2.5 million in its run. After that, it aired on cable and regular TV for years. The movie did get a DVD release, and was restored for Blu-ray by Shout Factory, where you can get it on a 2-pack with Jaws of Satan. Kino Lorber released it last year on its own disc. Empire of the Ants, Food of the Gods, and the 77 Island of Dr. Moreau are all streaming on Tubi. Squirm. Squirm is a 1976 horror film from director Jeff Lieberman. This one, to my knowledge, is a one-of-a-kind. The only movie I'm aware of where the monster is killer earthworms. Squirm's about a small town in Georgia where an electrical storm causes earthworms to become aggressively carnivorous. The movie was also written by the director, who came up with the idea when he was younger. His brother sent an electrical current into the ground, which caused earthworms to surface, so he could trap them to use as fishing bait. He said this scared the hell out of him, and later sparked his imagination enough to write the script. When casting the film, the director passed on both Kim Basinger and Martin Sheen, both of which he regretted. The makeup effects were done by the FX master Rick Baker. They used hundreds of fake rubber worms as well as thousands of real worms. When the movie was sent off for a rating, it received an R. This was a surprise to the distributor, AIP, who were expecting a PG. They cut the film down, but it still got an R. The movie hit theaters July 14th, 1976. Then, in 1977, it was re-rated, and it got a PG, which again goes to show how stupid the ratings board is. The TV edit for the film was even worse, removing anything remotely scary from the film. Years later, Mystery Science Theater 3000 picked up the film for an episode on its 10th season. This was the last episode of the show on the Sci-Fi Channel. So, unknown to a lot of viewers, the movie was edited even further than the TV edit. As such, giant chunks of the film were removed, and now so much was missing, some things within the film didn't make sense. As much as I love Mystery Science Theater 3000, this is a case of where they drastically misrepresented the film. There are some movies that are genuinely bad, but this one is actually pretty good. By removing so much from the film, it made it seem incompetent. In fact, Mike and the bots were questioning why things weren't in the movie, when really their editors were the reason those scenes were missing. If you've only seen the Mystery Science Theater version, I really recommend you check out the uncut version. While no, it's not some incredibly misunderstood horror classic, it's much better than you have been led to believe. It's gross, it's slimy, and if you like these kinds of films, it's very much worth your time. The uncut version of the film is available on DVD and Blu-ray. The movie is currently streaming on Amazon Prime. Bug. Cockroaches are the worst. Giant hissing ones are even worse. Although you know what is the king of all horrifically bad roaches? Giant hissing ones that can set themselves on fire. Bug's a 1975 horror film from director Jeanette Swark. The movie was based on the 1973 novel The Hephaestus Plague by Thomas Page. Page co-wrote the film with gimmick master William Castle. The movie is about an earthquake that unleashes a wave of insects that previously had been surviving underground for centuries. While crickets communicate by rubbing their legs together, these mutants rub their legs together to start fires. A scientist becomes obsessed with the bugs, so he crossbreeds them with cockroaches to create giant flying hyper-intelligent roaches that can set things on fire. Brilliant! The movie hit theaters on June 17, 1975. William Castle was working on the film, but his declining health caused him to drop out. This ended up being the last film he worked on before his passing in May of 1977. Wikipedia said the film made over $8 million at the box office, but that's wrong. They're linking to the 2007 film Bug with Ashley Judd, a very different movie with the same name. The movie apparently pulled in closer to $3.5 million at the time. It made more over the years with cable sales and video rentals. The movie was released on DVD and Blu-ray. It's available on video on demand, but not for streaming. Locusts, Day of Destruction. In 2005, there wasn't just one movie about killer locusts. There were two. Locusts, Day of Destruction, and Locusts, the Eighth Plague. I'm going to be focusing more on Day of Destruction since it's the one with Lucy Lawless. Locusts, Day of Destruction is a 2005 made-for-TV horror film from director David Jackson. The movie's about a swarm of genetically altered locusts eating their way across the world. It's up to a ragtag team of scientists, government officials, and farmers to figure out a way to stop them. Will Xena kick the locusts into next week? The movie aired April 24th, 2005 on CBS. Critics weren't too kind to the movie. It was such a ridiculous premise that it should have been played campy, but for some reason, they played it straight. Meanwhile, the other Locust movie was made for the Sci-Fi Channel and was a lot sillier. It was also more enjoyable. Although they're both entertaining, they'd make for a fun double feature. Locust the Eighth Plague premiered on the Sci-Fi Channel November 12th, 2005. The Eighth Plague didn't have Lucy Lawless, but it did have Julie Benz, David Keith, Jeff Fahey, and the Burger King guy.
This is 2 sandwiches for the price of 1. This is a stick.
Dan Cortez. Overall, this movie is a little bit more of what you would expect from a killer locust movie. Lots of scenes of locusts eating things, as well as a healthy dose of TV-level gore. While critics didn't like Locust Day of Destruction, it must have been successful enough ratings-wise, because they made a sequel. October of 2005, they released Vampire Bats, which brought back Lucy Lawless and Dylan O'Neill. Only this time, like the title suggests, they had to fight genetically modified bats. You'd think after the Locust Plague, they'd stop with all the genetic modification nonsense. Locust Day of Destruction and Locust the Eighth Plague were released on DVD. The films are not available for streaming, but they are on YouTube. Ants! Guess what? More ants! Ants is a 1977 made-for-TV horror film. It sometimes goes by the alternate titles It Happened at Lakewood Manor and Panic at Lakewood Manor. The movie's about an old hotel, the Lakewood Hotel. While doing some construction on the building, the builders aggravate some very cranky ants. The ants surface and proceed to eat people in and around the hotel. The movie stars Robert Foxworth, Brian Dennehy, Suzanne Summers, Bernie Casey, and Linda Day George. The movie started filming in July of 1977. Filming took about 3 weeks on a budget of close to $1 million. The movie was filled with hundreds of thousands of ants. This was long before CG, obviously, and they had to do this the hard way. As you would suspect, the ants kinda got everywhere, which often made filming not quite so fun. The movie premiered December 2nd, 1977 on ABC. Critics didn't like the film, with some calling it predictable but entertaining. It didn't do particularly well, as it ranked 20th in programming that week. Does have very memorable art, though. The movie was released on DVD and Blu-ray. It's not available for streaming, and it's not on YouTube. If you want to help support the channel, as well as vote on future entries for the Top 5 series, please consider joining my Patreon. One of these films is the bonus 6th entry you can see exclusively on Patreon. That's enough of these gross, creepy crawlies for this week. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.